welcome and thank you for joining our webinar. Before we jump in, let me briefly introduce myself and my guests and cover the agenda for today. I'm Samir Abu Ghosh. I'm the founder of Ontario Consulting. We are specialized in innovation labs, implementation, and agile transformation services. We run webinars frequently, and this is the second webinar where we focus on design thinking since we started our journey. I have here with me Rodi Vonk. Rodi is an international trainer, facilitator, keynote speaker, specialized in design thinking driven workshops. Welcome, Rodi.
Thank you.
We also have Domenico Sistito, a technology leader and agile coach specialized in empowering leaders to energize teams. Welcome again, and always, Domenico.
Happy to be here.
So our agenda today is to explore how to run a successful design thinking hackathon. We will split it in 3 segments. We will discuss the top tips that need to be covered before, during, and post hackathon. And to ensure a hackathon that generates an impact, we are going to think through the dimensions of people, processes, tools, and technologies. Now, before we delve into details, we need to establish one important context that makes your hackathons stand out. Here's the thing. Some organizations treat a hackathon like a summer carnival, if you will, a fun one-off event. They bring people together for a 1-day sprint or a 2-day sprint, hoping for magic. But if you view the design thinking hackathon as a standalone event, you are setting it up to fail from our experience. All that to say, there is a fact we need to anchor today's conversation on, which is basically a successful hackathon is not a one-off project. It is a critical, visible mechanism of your organization's overarching innovation strategy and culture. When it is done right, a hackathon proves that innovation is not just a buzzword on the wall, but a funded, supported, sustained activity within the organization. So the focus should always be not just on how to run the event successfully, but on how to connect it to the bigger picture, the why. Ensuring you have the right people, supporting processes, enabling tools and technologies to make the ideas generated sustainable. With that in mind, we now can get into the actionable details. The first segment will cover basically what are the top pre-hackathon steps to ensure a successful event. So that will be our focus now. Anyone would like to chime in?
And what a great way to set the stage, and what a great introduction. So thinking about the pre-steps, and the first couple things that come to mind is, well, we are in a digital world, and technology is a key component for successful hackathons. So we need to do our preparation in advance of our hackathon with technology. For example, what I mean is, let's say you have 100 participants. They're going to need access to other applications, other environments. You need to flush that out in advance before you start, so that the day of, the moment of a hackathon, you hit the ground running. Test environments, UAT environments, other different applications, databases, all the items that you feel that you need should be done in advance.
So basically, making sure we take care of the logistics beforehand, not leave anything to the last minute.
Yeah, exactly. Because what happens is that when you do get into the environment, so let's say it's a 1 or 2 day event, the time goes quickly. You're typically dealing with a lot of people. You've made this big investment, and time is money, and you have kind of some expectations that you want to achieve in this short period of time. And then when you get into it, the vibe or the rhythm, it flies. It can be fun. So that preparation, and speaking specifically around technology, is super important to be ready to go the moment that the hackathon is kicked off.
Beautiful. Rodi, anything from your
Yeah,
end?
yeah, definitely. Just like Don said, it is once you get into that hackathon, you get into that energy, the group is there, and before you know, time is running out of exercises that you wanted to do or steps that you wanted to take in the process. So my tip is always with hackathons, focus on less to achieve more, right? So don't try to fit too many things, too many objectives, too many tools or templates or steps in the 1 or 2 days that you have. And as Don said, you spend a lot of money probably and time in preparing, and you want to get a lot of out of that, which makes sense, but rather focus on less so that what you can focus on then will have the quality that you will be looking for. So that would be my main tip.
That's a super important point. Rodi, would you like to elaborate more on this? Why this is critical for the success of a hackathon?
Since if you want to achieve too many things in a hackathon, you can only do tiny little steps per goal, per objective, so that in the end you probably will have the idea, okay, yes, we did a lot, but did we actually achieve something? You may
see.
have just tapped into things too short, too little, to have been able to thoroughly think things through, thoroughly enough, so to say, in the time that you have. So that's what I've seen. In reality, people mostly try to do too many things
Yes.
within the time available.
Very, very well said. So when the participants are spread too thin across multiple goals, this would limit their ability to explore multiple ideas and consequently brainstorm and prototype more effectively, right?
Correct. Yeah. And even there, you might want to. It depends on your objectives and the goals that you have.
True.
And maybe you have even less steps of a process
Yes.
that you can spend a bit more time on, so that those steps at least have enough attention. And maybe, and that I think that builds upon what you said in your intro, that
Yes.
a hackathon is not a one-off session.
Yes.
You'd rather have maybe 2, 3, or 4 or 5 hackathons, because the energy in the room at that moment, everybody's together, you can pick each other's brains. That's the power. And rather do a few, so that you can achieve more by having more hackathons than trying to condense everything into one.
Another good point. So rather than playing catch, you probably find that the best approach is to divide or split your hackathon on multiple hackathons, and each one focuses on one part of the cycle, if you will, rather than trying to put everything in one place, doing everything at once, and ending up with not quality outcome. Dom, anything to add from your end regarding the pre-hackathon top tips?
Yeah, well, I really love what Arati said though about the kind of the limiting what you're trying to accomplish. And just one point on that, and then I have another item that we should think about.
Yes.
The reality is, and why this is so beautiful, is that we have limited brain, what I call brain capacity. And if you don't fill the brain to 100%, you allow for creativity. And that's one of the big things with innovation, with whether it's a hackathon or innovation labs, is that you need to allow for space in the brain to be creative. So, Roddy, I love that. Well said. So another thing too is in preparation for a hackathon is, in addition to my comments before about the technology piece of it, there's a people element of it. You need to make sure that you have the right people invited and prepared. And kind of talking about this vibe, one of the things that when I attend my hackathons here at my organization, we always make sure there's a senior leader, a CIO, or some global leader who comes in, because he or she brings that additional vibe and energy to the room. And it's a motivator. When that person walks in the room and they get on camera, you get that instant motivation. It's almost like that celebrity component of it. It's a celebratory moment for that leader to be in there. So the people, identifying your different roles. You want to make sure you have your vendors, you have your support staff. You may want to have people, what I call a floater, who's walking around the space at the different locations, who are just there to help alleviate bottlenecks or roadblocks or answer questions so that the teams can do what they need to do, and that's the focus, so that they're not distracted by other areas of struggle. So people, in addition to technology, very key for successful hackathons.
Beautiful. I see Roddy nodding his head.
Can I build up on that?
Of course.
Because that's a great point that you just made, Don, about having those maybe extra people, maybe some experts from within, maybe even from without outside of the company, depending on what you're working on. So that, and that's you put it in different words, Don, but it was about so that the people doing the hackathon can focus on the hackathon and their creativity and their expertise. And for me, that also relates to another point, which is having a good facilitator in the room, right? So that everybody in the room is there to use their expertise, their creativity, and they should not have to focus on the process. They should not have to take a look at the clock. Oh, how much time do we still have? And who is going to decide what we are going to do next? And do we have enough time for the next thing, etc., etc.? If you have a facilitator that is used to running these kind of hackathons, well prepared, then you don't have to worry about that at all. So that everybody can just focus on the content, and that's what the people in the room are there for, right? Their expertise and their creativity.
Does it matter if the facilitators have the knowledge in the subject that is being discussed? Does it make a difference?
They don't have to be the expert.
They don't have to be the experts. Exactly.
No. So I'm never, as a facilitator, I'm sure Don has the same experience. I'm not the expert. I don't want to be the expert. I don't have to have any knowledge of the topic that's being discussed. The knowledge is in the people, in the delegates in the session. I do nothing more as a facilitator than guiding the people through the process. And in facilitation, the world of facilitation, we tend to say, from a facilitator perspective, be the guide, not the hero, which means if you would be an expert in the area that the people are working on, the topic, then you might get sort of an idea that you also have some ideas on that topic, and you want to maybe push for your knowledge and put it up on the people instead of just being the guide there. And that's really important as far as I'm concerned. So maybe I'm not sure, Don, but I'm sure you have some thoughts on that as well.
I do. I like that. Be the guide, not the hero. And it goes into the whole concept around empowerment. And to be able to facilitate and create in essence, the culture of the moment. Because if you think about it, a hackathon is a big investment. Sometimes there can be hundreds of people who are involved and they're committed for those 2 days. And someone may stay back and say, well, I got hundreds of people who are committed to 2 days and they're not productive. Well, if it's done correctly, the productivity and the innovation that can come from a hackathon far exceeds 2 days of productivity without the innovation component of it. So super important, Roddy. I love the way you just phrased that.
Yes.
Yeah, and that point of productivity is also a very good one, Don, because I'm sure also we both have seen that that well facilitated sessions increase the energy, increase the productivity, and just like you said, you probably do a lot more than what you would do on a normal 2 days of work, right? If it's a 2-day session.
Awesome. So jumping to another point, also part of the pre-hackathon preparation is defining the goal out of the hackathon. What exactly you want to get out of the hackathon? Any thoughts on that?
Well, the goal is, if you know what you want to get out of it, that of course for preparation for the facilitator, it helps to understand, okay, what would be the best templates, tools, techniques to use if this is the goal, and how are we going to split that whole session up in steps to achieve that goal, and how much time will we have for each of those steps. And you make also, but that's maybe for later in the conversation, but if you have a clear goal at the start, You can also measure, of course, afterwards if it was a successful hackathon regarding did we achieve what we
Right.
wanted to achieve.
So basically, if we're planning backward, we define the goal, what exactly we want to achieve out of this hackathon, how success looks like, and accordingly, we will detail the exact plan, what needs to be there in terms of templates, tools, and expertise, and stakeholders, if you will, who might be joining to support in different levels to enrich the conversations to make sure we have a successful hackathon. Awesome. Domenico, anything you'd like to add?
It's the value. The goal is the value, and you're making this big investment, and you want to make sure that you have identified the value that you're seeking or you're marching towards. So very important. Don't overlook it. Make that time to prepare, because at the end of it, you want to gauge how successful you are based on that goal, and you achieve that value or as much of it as possible.
Like moving to another, maybe on the lighter part of the preparations for that. Like when we think hackathons, we think, okay, sticky notes and Sharpies and papers, big papers on the wall, which is something we all love. How to make sure we're doing it right. We're having the right balance. How we're making sure while we're doing this, we don't lose sight of why we're having this hackathon. Rowdy, anything from your
Yeah,
experience?
yeah, I always get excited when you start talking about post-it notes because for a few reasons. I'm sure that people watching this, almost everybody has been in, if you want, post-it note sessions, and sometimes you see that people go like, "Oh no, not another post-it note session," right? And I know that is for multiple reasons, and one of the reasons is, well, it is about basically what we already discussed, but just to take it from there and then continue to another point. We've all been in those sessions where we have a lot of post-it notes towards the end of a meeting, and then oh, we still have only 5 minutes. Oh, we need to discuss who is going to do the processing of all the post-its, who's going to photograph them, and can you email that afterwards, and that's it, right? But that's not what you want. You want to make sure that you make decisions in the session, and why are post-it notes so important? If you use them well, and also not only from a facilitation perspective, as in what tool or technique or template are you going to use post-it notes, but also, for example, what color do you use, right? Because I've literally been in sessions overseas where locally they were organizing all the stationery and the post-its, etc., and you get like a set of post-its, and we've probably all seen them with purple and green and blue, and you get this full color wall with all kind of different colors while we're doing one exercise, and that makes it really well, a bit of a mess, to be honest. So there is a reason why you want to organize that as well. So if you do this exercise, it makes sense to have just the regular yellow post-it notes and everybody writes on the yellow, so that it's sort of even spread and even colored. And we know there's no signage, or how would you say it? There's not a signal going out of the color of post-its.
Right.
Rather than having, for example, post-it notes in different colors where you can say, okay, we're going to categorize all the post-it notes. Well, then we use, for example, blue post-it notes to name the categories, right?
Totally.
So there's more to it than just having some post-it notes and having enough post-it notes in a session.
Absolutely. And around the same point, like we usually use different teams' activities, and sometimes we bring board games to the hackathon, which is all good stuff. But like from my experience, you always need to be intentional because there are so many things out there. You need to make sure, why am I using this activity, and how is this relevant to the big context, to the goal of this hackathon? Why am I bringing this board game and asking everybody to participate? And how is this again relevant and important to the conversation? Because it's at the end of the day, while we'd like to have a fun hackathon, an engaging hackathon, but we want to make sure that it is goal-oriented and it is connected to the overall strategy.
Yeah, so I think Roddy and Samir, you said it well, and I think if I step back and kind of summarize it, is providing that structure that's not so rigid that you can't be flexible, but also that is not so full that you can't be creative. An agenda is also a great way to start off the hackathon so that participants understand what is expected of them, and they can kind of start to process kind of where the time is going to be spent and invested and focused on. So structure, not too rigid, but flexible enough to allow for the creativity and flexibility. You both said it, and I just wanted to summarize it because it's a very important piece to this discussion.
I think agenda is a good segue to the second part of today's conversation. What are the things that we need to consider, key tips during the hackathon? Rodi, anything you want to add?
I think Dom already said it well. It is having a agenda for running your session. Doesn't mean, I'm just not just want to sort of repeat what you said, Dom, but I think it's so important. I always make an agenda so that I have a bit of an idea. Okay, is it doable? Do we have too many things in there or not in the session? Knowing that no session, no hackathon will run as scheduled at the start. So you have to allow for reading the room, feeling the energy of the team. And if you thought, hey, let's say we started at 9 and now it's 10:30 and I had another exercise for the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but I feel or sense that the energy in the room is sort of down, maybe it's not such a good idea to push through. And regardless of what the agenda was, let's have a break, right? And if you are an experienced facilitator, you don't get stressed by that. You know, okay, we do this exercise later on, or if we would even skip this one, or if we do this a little bit shorter, we can also get there, right? And if you have that experience, and then you will not get stressed if things go in a different direction. So that's a little bit building up on what Dom said about having agenda should not be too rigid, but also not be too sort of. You do need that structure, so that everybody at least has an idea. Okay, what are we going to do today, tomorrow?
Anything else? What other points we need to cover during the hackathon while we are running the hackathon?
Samir, actually, I want to ask Rowdy if you could just talk to us about what his thoughts are about the team size.
From my experience, if you split up a group in teams of 4 to 6 people, that works mostly best, since for multiple reasons. So no less than 4, I would say, because there's always in one of the teams someone is all of a sudden has to leave early, or is not showing up, or that happens, right? So then at least you have still 3 people in the team. Otherwise, you have only 2. That's a little bit a bit of a small team then. And I would say rather not more than 6, maybe 7. Since the bigger the teams will get, the more you will see that you will get into those group dynamics, where if a group becomes too big, if a team is too big, you run the risk of some people having a more louder voice in the group, and they might take over the conversations. And whereas the more introvert people will then take a step back and feel that they're not really contributing, or they don't feel that they are allowed to contribute. So that's why it's so important to not make the groups too big or too small, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I would second that. From my experience, 4 to 6 would be the sweetest spot, and it is actually supported by one of the theories. It's called Dunbar number, DUNBAR. You can Google it, and speaks about the quality of the conversation and the effectiveness of communication when you have this number that the team number is around this size. What else we need to consider during the hackathon?
the one thing that I think is also very beneficial, may seem
Yes.
kind of elementary, is make sure that people are well fed and they have plenty of coffee and those kind of human items that we need day to day. I know it may sound silly, but it it's one less thing that the participants have to worry about is, oh, where am I going to get my lunch or my dinner or whatever, my coffee. So give them everything they need to not need or want to leave kind of the environment of the hackathon, not necessarily the room, but the point is allow them to focus on being creative in the innovation part of it. So feed them often, feed them well. Correct. So what you could do, Samir, too, this is a common practice that
Yeah.
we do when we're building high-performing, self-organizing teams is you can have a brief operational agreement or kind of a memorandum of understanding in advance of some of the rules that we all want to play by. And that may be one of them, I would expect, because that focus is important. And it's very easy to get distracted. But to your point, if you give them that out to remain tied to their other responsibilities or wherever else they may need to give their attention, you will find that they will be focused when it's focus time. And that yields the best results. It's a great idea.
Very nice. Another point also would like to add the importance of documenting the conversations that are happening. We have multiple teams having different conversations, and you want to make sure that there is a clear mechanism of how you go about the documentation. Some hackathons they utilize established tools, idea management solutions for that purpose. Others they bring people who are dedicated for this purpose and they are embedded within the team. They use different practices, but the bottom line, make sure this is documented and communicated made available to the audience after the hackathon is done, because otherwise there might be a disconnect. A huge effort is put that day, a huge investment is put in the hackathon. You want to make sure you build on that. Any thoughts? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. So one of the reasons, so that is exactly one of the reasons why, and I'm just going to build up on the post-it notes again for a minute, because basically, if you want to document the conversation, that's what you want, right? You want to make sure that you capture as much as you can the valuable stuff that's being said, etc. So also that is a reason to use a lot of post-it notes, because basically what you're doing, if you run the right, using the right techniques when having a conversation, you are visualizing the conversation by writing things on post-it notes. And by visualizing, I don't mean drawing, but just write down what you think. And just a very quick example, let's say one part of an hackathon will most likely be doing a sort of brainstorming session. If people normally start to brainstorm, they start by word of mouth. But if you do that, after a minute or two or three, maybe, you maybe have got caught in a conversation and you go like, oh, I had 2 ideas 2 minutes ago, but I forgot them, because you got so involved in the conversation. So an example of documenting the conversation is then, I would always say, don't start brainstorming by word of mouth. Just allow everybody in the room for, let's say, 3 minutes to first write down their ideas before having a conversation, and each idea on a separate post-it note. And that's just a simple example, but then basically what you're doing, you allow everybody to write down and document their thoughts. And you can do that, of course, in many situations and on many steps in the process. And that's how you sort of document what is being said. Everybody can read what was said. And that's also a way towards the end of your hackathon, you can start photographing the walls with post-it notes, for example. Or if you wanted to use digital tools to write digital post-it notes, then at least you have all the thoughts, you have them captured. So that's, for me, a very important thing in documentation related to how you actually run your exercises.
And allow me to move to the last part of this conversation, the post-hackathon activities. What are the key ones that we need to attend to?
As far as I'm concerned, it's making very clear what is going to be done with the outcomes and communicate that back to the participants. So that's, I think, the shortest version of this topic.
This is an important piece too, and you keep hearing me saying investment and innovation. Now, to really maximize that investment that you're making in a hackathon, it's what also happens post the actual hackathon. I've experienced a hackathon where we had this excellent session. It was well run. The preparations were done. The vibe, the energy was excellent. What we produced in that short 2 days was amazing. And then it stopped. There was no follow-up. There was no leverage in what was done post. The good news is that feedback was given and the hackathon model has changed. So it now gets blended into kind of our day-to-day operational processes for funding and things like that. To really reap the most value, it's what are you going to do post the hackathon? How do you leverage that focus, that innovation, that creativity that was done in that short period of time to deliver value post and ultimately to continue to deliver value out in the future? So post activities in my mind are very important, if not just as important as the work that's done during the hackathon. You have this value, keep it growing, keep it moving forward.
I agree. Roddy?
Yeah, so I think that refers back to one of the things you do pre-hackathon, as a pre-hackathon activity. If you know what the goal is, then you can also already think before you do the hackathon, okay, assuming, of course, that we will achieve that goal, what are the next steps after the hackathon? And I think it's not only, just as Don said, you invest a lot in this, right, as an organization, especially if you have those bigger hackathons. So, and it's not so much about, of course, no, let's put it different. On the one hand, you want to make sure that the hackathon itself has great energy and reaches the goals that you set for it. But if you don't have that right follow-up, then that all the time and effort in preparing and the money is probably down the drain. Plus, to go even further back in the conversation, what you started with, Samir, is a hackathon should be part of your strategy, and you probably want to have multiple hackathons as part of how you want to innovate in your organization, the way of collaboration in those hackathons. And if post-hackathon follow-up is not there, what you will get also in participants is to say, hey, we spent 2 days, but I also had a very big to-do list of other stuff. So if they ask me to join another one and there's no follow-up, then I'd rather say no. And there goes your strategy.
100%. Thank you for stating it this way. Like, allow me be more blunt, if you will. If you don't do proper follow-up, you might risk losing your credibility with the participants, because they took us seriously and they made sure to allocate time and energy to participate and offer ideas and dream, right? Depending again on the context of that hackathon. So you need to make sure you maintain this and nurture it. So it will manifest how serious the organization is about their innovation strategy and their innovation plans. And this is another way to make sure people are committed for the next hackathon or the next activity in relation to your innovation journey. So well said. And speaking of technicalities, this also can be done in multiple ways. I mean, there is the usual follow-up. We did this with that. This is what we're going to happen next, etc. Also, there is also should not also forget to ask for specific feedback on how we ran that hackathon, what they think of the activity itself, and how to make it better next time, because it's a continuous improvement journey, right? So they feel people are listening and they're taking their what they say seriously and applying the feedback for the good of everybody. Dom, you wanted to add anything?
I think both of you had said it very well. to tie it back into, Samir, what you said in your opening comments about thinking of this as a culture, you master that post in addition to the pre and the during the hackathon. When it becomes part of your culture, that's the value that gives back indefinitely. And in my mind, that's the ultimate goal, because culture is where, at the end of the day, is where you're going to get the most success and value. And if it's built in, it can be indefinite. So well said.
Thank you. All right. I think we reached to the end of today's conversation. I believe this was very rich. And before we conclude, any last word, Rodi and Dom?
Well, maybe I think you said it in a nice way, Don, saying that it's all about culture, right, in an organization. And I think we all know the saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So rather have that great culture and where people are involved and enthusiastic. And I think if you see how we tend to collaborate in hackathons, from my facilitator's perspective and from my experience, the way that you allow people to collaborate, what some of the things that we discussed, how you use the post-it notes, what kind of activities, smaller teams so that everybody's involved, so that the energy is high and everybody feels involved, which also helps in when you have outcomes that need execution, that people will be more tend to execute it because they felt they were part of the process. That's all part of the culture, but also those ways of collaboration. I think you can also apply a lot of the things that we tend to do in hackathons, the tools and techniques from a facilitator's perspective, in any collaboration in a team, in an organization. So if you talk about culture, as far as I'm concerned, the way of collaboration that we tend to do in a hackathon, you can definitely take bits and pieces from that and using it in your day-to-day to improve that productivity as well in other meetings or sessions or workshops that you may have in your organization. Encourage that sort of that sense of activity and feeling connected with the outcomes, feeling involved, etc. And I think that will definitely help building that innovative culture in your organization.
Great. Thank you, Rodi. Dom, any last word?
Just one last comment. First of all, gentlemen, thank you. This was a great conversation. The power of the hackathon is a big one. And I know the one lesson that I learned when I participated in my first hackathon many years ago, the one thing that I left with really understanding is when you enable teams to focus, their productivity and creativity goes through the roof. That lesson has stuck with me for many years after my first hackathon that I participated in. So focus equals creativity and productivity, in addition to this great conversation we had. Thank you very much for letting me participate in it.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.